lives of two people, but it has.
Drop off a warm meal and get more than you expect. Volunteer at americaletsdolunch.org. Brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media outlets we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways you can, of course, chime in on the show as we have those comments up throughout the program, but also a lot of stuff we're definitely going to be getting into today. Marky Mandingo chiming in with us here already. Glad you're along with us for the ride, as we are definitely going to be delving into a lot of in-depth and very important subjects happening in our region here today, including we have been talking a lot, and I do mean a lot, about the numbers involving the local immigration response, the crisis that we have been seeing that has been overwhelming local resources in a variety of ways. And now some of those resources may not be getting reimbursed. Specifically, as we have talked about, roughly 16, 17, somewhere between 16 and 18 million dollars of additional local funds being dedicated to part of this response. Reimbursements have often been discussed as one of the buoying factors under it, keeping it afloat and making sure it won't affect too much of the public coffers. But in this case, FEMA may only reimburse 30% of migrant busing costs, specifically, that also specifically part of a $10 million amount being looked at by the city of El Paso. And yeah, I was expecting there might be a little bit of, not exactly schadenfreude, but maybe hindsight. Stephen Christopher saying, I called that one, and a bunch of reporting going on. Then we'll certainly get into there. But even in the midst of all this, as we're very much been focusing on the human factor involved in this, hundreds of thousands of buses just at El Paso's ports of entry in the last few days. Primarily, I mean, I know we've talked a lot about fentanyl, but looking at cocaine and other still very illegal substances, but that has been continuing on a pace in our region as well. But also trying to get to the bottom of some of the very impactful things coming from this migration and immigration response, with the El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank sat down with their CEO to go into, well, questions and concerns that you all had brought up about what is the situation and what do the resources in that arena look like in our region. Marky Mandingo also saying we're going to go broke. We should send that money to Ukraine. I'm not sure if that one's tongue-in-cheek, but I could also understand that it possibly could, because I know that's also been a subject of contention in its own route. So a lot to get into today. Also something that we kind of mentioned but didn't quite get into, what's going on between the Tiguas and the state of Texas and what may now be possible at the Isleta del Sur Pueblo. And then even as there are some very serious conversations going on about what will be happening in other parts of the western reaches of the United States whenever it comes to water usage, there has been this simmering fight going on between, well, even just Texas and New Mexico, with also Colorado as a co-signer, about water usage rights that may not immediately affect what you get out of your taps, but it may in the long term affect what we can actually buy and grow within the region. So significant in its own right. So a lot of these interconnected issues going on today. It's all a web, and we're going to do our best to unravel it as best we can, as we do every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. So more commentary coming in over on the social media. Also dropping those likes and reacts. We do appreciate Eric McNabb, James Holmes, Flaco Jimenez, Robbie Flores, Marky Mandingo, and Monica Cervantes. Keep those going throughout the shows. We can, of course, check in on those on the various social medias. Appreciate that. So let's dive right into it. And yes, some, I think, did call it, or at the very least there was concern about the schedule, the timing of these reimbursements, and now being reported on both by our news partners there at KFOX 14 and other concerns in town, including El Paso Matters, that local taxpayers may be left on the hook specifically for busing being the discussion right now. So we're still looking to see how much of that, again, roughly $16 to $18 million that's being spent locally on parts of this response will be wrapped up in this, but it'll only be 30% of the migrant busing costs being reimbursed by FEMA. Again, that reporting specifically now from our news partners there at KFOX 14. And Ted Cora saying, I think a little bit tongue-in-cheek there, if only because of the emoji. So the Biden administration is costing El Paso millions, and we need to go after Trump. I mean, different arenas. We should probably be going after both, to be perfectly honest with you, in terms of reimbursements and money being seen. But yeah, I'm going to worry about the millions before the hundreds of thousands in terms of dollars at this point. And so, again, quoting from our news partners there at KFOX 14, city officials and Rep. Veronica Escobar have said for several weeks that money spent on addressing the migrant crisis would be covered by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. However, federal reimbursement for transportation, the city's biggest cost, was capped at 30% by FEMA's Emergency Food and Shelter Program. So costs to this point have been approximately $3 million overall, according to Nicole Coate, Managing Director of Budgeting and Strategic Sourcing for the city of El Paso. So, and the total number of migrants released in El Paso recently has been about 38,000, with about 6,305 of those being provided long-distance travel. Again, those numbers as of yesterday, and those into our news partners there at KFOX 14. And so the busing amount, there's that $250,000 amount per day that was put up by the city last week as well. We, of course, posted that up over on our page, and a lot of you had very interesting comments to make about that, and concerns, and a lot of it here. Anyway, we got other comments coming in on separate circumstances. Also, just as a finer point to be made there, just because I don't talk about it doesn't mean that you can't, A, bring it up. We tend to focus on local issues, so if you're accusing me of ignoring something that has absolutely nothing to do with this region, I mean, A, you can bring it up, but B, don't also be guaranteed that we're going to talk about it, because that's not what we do on this program. In any case, getting back to the local here, that $250,000 looks like the majority of it has been spent on the busing. That has been, again, the subtext for all of this, pretty much all of the response we've been seeing, not even just now, in the last few weeks that we've been dealing with this surge, this crisis in our area, seeing overwhelming of local resources dedicated to this issue. But even before this point, pretty much all of the organizations, agencies, entities, etc., focused on dealing with people once they are released from federal custody, pending either removal hearings, asylum hearings, anything involving the federal immigration system, has been to keep them moving. That's really been the major underlying part of it. So, looking at that has been the major part of the money being spent on it. Yeah, that is making about sense. About $6 million finalized this week. As again, that contract to pay about $6 million to pay to bus migrants, including that, again, roughly $3 million, which already has been spent, with more of it coming. So with that cap, now that 30% cap on the busing specifically from the, again, FEMA in this case, what the director for the budgets there with the city of El Paso said, that we're going to be monitoring the situation where previously we didn't have to provide charter buses because we were dealing with mainly sponsored migrants. Again, that term sponsored is still an interesting one in this circumstance. It makes it seem like, well, there's part of a program, they have signed up for something, and there's someone ready to take them in. And that last part may be more or less true, or at least resources they're traveling to. Calling it as they've got funding and people willing to accept them into their home is not exactly a part of it. So a lot more commentary there. And Abel Rodriguez saying, so Monday, county commissioners, we will see if the petition on UMC made the threshold. And yeah, that's another simmering one here. So a lot of, very important knowledge coming up here. And Eric McNabb on the idea of that cap in place, saying that is incomplete information. That money comes from many different places, not just FEMA. Yeah, but also a lot of the money now becoming straight out of local coffers. That's the part of the problem, because the reimbursements, what the city and county and other local entities have been putting out, governmentally speaking, was that they would get reimbursed for these funds. So with that not having to get into place, they may have to look for other reimbursements where they're available. But ultimately, the problem then is that the local taxpayer may be left on the hook for all of this, and what further implications that may have, well, you will definitely be getting into this. And Maria Coleman saying on that point, saying the mayor stated today that all migrant funding will be reimbursed. Did he misspeak or try to hoodwink us? The money could have been allocated to local needs. Even when reimbursed, the process takes at least 1 year. Yeah, there had been talk about previously being quarterly reimbursements, but a lot of this now being thrown into a bit of disarray. So what exactly it'll take to deal with that, yeah. And Marky Mandingo saying that Doubting Migrants have sponsors in Kansas or Connecticut, primarily, again, referencing some of the relevant parts from our conversation with city officials, particularly Mario D'Agostino, the deputy city manager and the head of the City County Office of Emergency Management, that they were essentially sending them where they wanted to go in bulk. Where previously, like, single tickets had been a thing, not from the governmental response, but from the kind of local nonprofit community response. But they were then chartering those buses, go to one destination. So that's why New York, Chicago have been a part of this local part of it. Anyway, a lot more commentary coming in there, including RJ, Abel Rodriguez, and a whole lot more. We're going to get further into that. But our interview today, as I mentioned already, going to be talking with the El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank on their involvement and their level of response here. Both what's been going on in the community overall. We were already wanting to check in with the food bank before any of this became an issue, because knowing what's going on there for those most in need in our community is incredibly important. But also, they have some, responsibilities essentially in this kind of a situation. The question has been raised, what does that actually mean for the resources available here? We go in depth on that conversation with the CEO of El Pasoans Fighting Hunger. So stay tuned for that and a whole lot more coming out of this first break of the hour. Again, you are tuned into Talk El Paso, airing live here on News Radio 690 KTSM. After we come back from this break, going to be talking a lot more about that, so stay tuned for all the things that we do here with more Talk El Paso on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Northbound on Joe Battle Boulevard, a crash reported at Zaragoza, an injury accident with police on the scene, Gateway West at Yarborough, an accident reported Lee Trevino northbound at Montwood Drive, and a crash slowing traffic Montana Avenue eastbound at Geronimo, a stalled vehicle on I-10 West at Zaragoza, blocking the right shoulder. Kerry Edwards, El Paso Traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Ben Ferguson Podcast.
Coming up on the Ben Ferguson Podcast, what would happen to you if you bought a firearm the same way that Hunter Biden purchased his? There's a good chance you'd be in jail right now. I'll explain why. Make sure you download the Ben Ferguson Podcast now.
From fuel injectors to intake valves to combustion chambers and beyond, your car's emission system takes a beating. It gets choked with baked-on carbon that affects your air-to-fuel ratio, slowing you down. You gotta keep it clean to get top performance, longer vehicle life, higher gas mileage, and to pass state emissions testing. Show your car some love with CRC Guaranteed to Pass Emission System Cleaner. Yep, guaranteed to pass. Strong language for a strong product. And here's some more. Double your money back if you don't pass. You know it's gotta work. It's on the shelf at your favorite auto parts store, so grab some today. Expensive? Heck no. Hard to use? Heck no. Effective? You bet. Try it once, and you'll add it to your car a few times a year to keep things rolling just right. CRC Guaranteed to Pass Emission System Cleaner. Look for the box.
On a busy construction site, things can be misinterpreted. Bring in the bulldozer. It can sound a lot like,
building looks mediocre.
Designs need a do-over.
Or even,
install a roller coaster? Okay.
be on the same page at every stage with Autodesk, from the designers to the field crew to the owner of the finished building. Autodesk Construction Cloud gives everyone clarity. Now, can we actually bring in the bulldozer?
What did 9 out of 10 people who died from COVID have in common?
They were 50 or older.
And if you have a condition like heart disease or diabetes, your risk is even higher.
COVID vaccines lower the risk of death.
Get your updated vaccine now. It could save your life.
We can do this. Find updated COVID vaccines at vaccines.gov. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
If you see something, why do you say something?
I see safe for my friends.
For my community.
For everyone here. We all have something worth protecting, a why that unifies us. Report suspicious activity to local authorities. If you see something, say something.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Welcome back here to Talk El Paso, airing on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on our various social media pages. We're up on these days: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk on those platforms. Wherever you're able to pick us up and make your comments if you choose to do so, that's the right place for you as we continue our mission to have live local talk radio here in the borderland and all the things that it entails. So keep those comments coming. We'll pop up, the streams of thought, the relevant ones for what we're talking about right now on screen, but of course getting to as many as we can throughout the program. But joining us here in studio right now, we are joined by Susan Goodell, CEO of the El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank. Thank you very much for coming in to speak with us today.
Great to be here, Andrew.
It's been a minute since we checked in, but of course, this has been a conversation that we've been having and has been more or less ongoing about what the level of need is, what the resources are available, and what the balance is between those two, particularly when it comes, again, to food resources and, again, as the name suggests, fighting hunger in our area. And this is one of those things that we've had a few callers and commenters share their perspective, their 2 cents on, or their experiences directly with, either volunteering or seeing the lines, those kind of things. And there may be more people than, maybe I give credit to, that have those kind of experiences seeing that. But I feel like for the overall community, this is very much an out of sight, out of mind kind of situation, that if you don't know someone involved with it, aren't being involved with yourself, or have the need of it, and given the fact that it can be so invisible otherwise, like you may not fully realize that even your friends or neighbors might be going through this, because it's often not something talked about, that the level of resources that are available, but also the need in our area, has been pretty much constantly in flux. I know there are at least some out there thinking, well, I haven't heard about this in a while, it's probably fine, right? And not to undercut y'all's efforts, because you are doing very monumental efforts almost on the daily. The situation has continued to evolve, and the challenges have by no means really subsided at this point, to my understanding.
No, we're facing a lot of challenges right now. There continues to be a global food shortage.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, the federal government has reduced food supplies to food banks across the nation by about 60% since the end of December last year. And of course, the continued transportation supply chain issues, the cost of diesel to truck food in, cost of food itself. And there are a lot of challenges right now. And at the same time that those are happening at the food bank level, they are certainly happening to all of us as individuals. And for people who are on the edge or living in poverty, which is a very high percentage, over 20% here in El Paso, affording the cost of food right now, with the price of rent, the price of food, the price of everything going up with such extreme inflation, is driving a lot more people to the food bank. So we're facing quite a few challenges. And actually, I want to point out that you are absolutely right. For those of us who are in a position to take food for granted,
Oh, yeah.
it is so easy to not realize the struggle and the pain that so many are in, because it's so easy to go to the grocery store. Maybe they don't have your favorite item, but there are plenty of other things to choose for. And as long as you've got money in your pocket, you don't feel that same stress, financial stress, emotional stress, nutritional stress that people in need do.
And it's also very tempting to think about it very academically, particularly when we talk about things like inflation, the cost of things, transportation, everything increasing in prices. For a lot, it may be we got to tighten up the budget. We can't do as much this year. It's a very, very different situation to be in versus, we got to tighten the belt, do with less, as opposed to what do we cut out that we probably can't, but otherwise we have no other options. Like being pushed up against that wall towards the edge of the cliff, as you kind of referenced it there, are very much realities in our region right now. And again, the safety net, one of them, again, has been the food bank. And that is why you all have seen, we had talked in previous times, including towards the end of last year, about the level that demand had been at, how it had, of course, skyrocketed at the beginning of the pandemic. And there was a lot of upheaval within job markets, of people needing to seek other things, getting laid off, all of that. And that it essentially never really tapered off, at least from the last time we spoke. So in general, right now, where is the situation of the actual level of demand here in our region?
Since January of this year, we've seen about 154,000 unique individuals coming to the food bank to put food on their table. So what that means by unique individuals, that means literally 154,000 different people have relied on the food bank for emergency food. Now, of course, all of us need food every day. We need food at least 2-3 times a day. So most of those people have come to the food bank multiple times. So it's not just that 154,000 coming once, but they need to come for regular sustenance to be able to survive. And so it's a lot right now.
Absolutely. And again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Susan Goodell, the CEO of the El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank. Again, any information about them, their work, how you can get involved, etc. El Pasoans Fighting Hunger.org. That's El Pasoans Fighting Hunger.org is their website to find more information. And of course, we'll be talking more about that. Also, their phone number, 915-298-0353, 915-298-0353. And so the level of just general demand that we have been dealing with and seeing in this community has been, again, tapering off is, again, a lot of the expectation I think people may have about, well, I haven't heard about it, so it must not be that much of an issue. It's because honestly, the resources have become less, and you all have had to be, essentially from my perspective, having both visited your operation and had other conversations with you all, having to be more like laser focused on just the finding of it. I mean, we've talked and you showed me around what it takes to do the truckloads of food and do the other processing and getting the, creative with it, essentially, to try and find and go further and further afield to find those resources that really then exemplifies the way that you all are able to do much more with monetary donations when it comes into that, because sure, it may feel good for someone to hand a canned good to y'all. The money they spent on that, if they went to I want to donate something and went to the store, bought it, and gave it to you, the amount of efficiencies y'all can do is so much better. But the fact of the matter is that, again, a lot of those possibilities are tightening in its own right here. And of course, one of the major questions that we have had and that we have had come up here is about the ongoing, even increasing challenges in our region, particularly with the recent border security and immigration response we have been seeing, where we have been seeing people released from federal custody pending immigration court hearings at certain points, literally being on El Paso's downtown streets here. And some questions have come up about the involvement of the food bank, among other things. So in general, overall, what has been the involvement of y'all in that response, and particularly providing resources?
So this has been an incredible response from both local government and from the local charities. And the food bank is really the backbone of food security in our community. We are mandated. Our mission is that we provide food for people in need in the Tri-County area, Hudspeth, Culberson, and El Paso counties. And so if there is a person in need in those 3 counties, we are expected to provide food for them. And that is exactly what we are doing. So when people were released by the federal government into the community, and they were, the shelters were over capacity, we were certainly providing food for people temporarily living on the streets, certainly around the bus stop or the bus station downtown. But we also regularly provide food to the many shelters in town. And that takes the form largely of sack lunches, sack breakfasts, because the needs of the migrant population is very different from the local population, in that we can't give them ingredients and expect them to go home and cook those ingredients in their kitchen, because they don't have kitchens, they don't have stoves, they don't have the means to do that. So they have a very specialized need in that, these have to be ready to eat foods. And so we are making sack lunches, a really tough day, we can make 2,000 a day. Lighter days, in the hundreds rather than thousands. And then those are consumed that same day, or they are going on to the buses, because many of the migrants are traveling for multiple days to New York or Chicago or wherever they might ultimately be going. And they need liquids and they need foods to eat on those bus rides. So that's largely what we are doing. We are pulling from national sources to bring in those ready-to-eat foods and those items that can be made into those sack lunches. In addition to that, I forgot to mention, we are also providing ingredients to many of the charities, churches, the diocese, others that are cooking those meals so that the migrants have a hot meal in the evening. So it's a partnership between the local religious leaders, government, the food bank, and other charities.
So again, because of the way that you are of course, federally recognized and involved in recipient of federal programs here, this is part of the mission that then comes along with it. Again, what you mentioned that you are charged with. And so again, the two parts you're talking about there, both the kind of ready to eat for the transient part of it when they are moving out of the area, but then for when essentially shelter services are being provided, you're providing kind of the bulk foodstuffs that prepare in large amounts to the organizations doing it.
For the evening meals, for the breakfast and lunch. So lunch, for example, would likely be a lunch meat sandwich with some kind of a lettuce or other veggie like a tomato on top, cheese, a side of yogurt or hand fruit if we can get it. So apples, oranges, that sort of thing. This time of year, while it's still fairly warm, we're providing mostly Gatorade and water. And as the temperatures cool, we'll be switching over more to juices and to milk and that sort of thing.
Again, joining us here in studio right now is Susan Goodell, CEO of the El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank. Again, any details about them, elpasoansfightinghunger.org. We got to take that next break right now, but coming out of this, we're going to talk more about this, including some of the very important questions that you all have brought up. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. A man living in Las Cruces has been sentenced for sexual exploitation of children. Cheyenne Downing was sentenced today after authorities found several video files of young girls engaging in sexually explicit conduct. Officials say the discovery was made when authorities in New Mexico investigated offenders sharing child pornography. Downing was sentenced to probation for 5 to 20 years. He must register as a sex offender. Nearly 70% of Americans are looking for extra work to combat inflation, according to a new study conducted this month by Blue Crew, which is a workforce as a service platform. A big part of what makes it hard on El Paso residents to make ends meet during soaring inflation is that most aren't making a livable wage with one job, according to Bianca Cervantes, who's with Workforce Solutions Borderplex. And those who buy tickets to this year's Sun Bowl game will probably receive merchandise from last year's matchup that was scrapped between Washington State and Miami. You just have to follow a few steps on kfoxtv.com. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
A stalled semi's blocking two right lanes on Gateway North at Trans Mountain, stay to the left. Rushing Drive at Trans Mountain, an accident reported. A crash reported Lee Trevino northbound at Montwood. An earlier crash on Porfirio Diaz north of the 10 around West Missouri Avenue is slowing traffic still. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Monsoon season officially comes to an end tomorrow, and we'll continue to see drier weather with more sunshine and seasonably warm temperatures. Your forecast for tonight keeps a few clouds overhead with temperatures cooling into the mid-50s to low 60s by early tomorrow morning. Coming up tonight, we'll talk about how long these cooler mornings will last, plus when we could see our next rain and storm chance. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Kira Miner.
This report is sponsored by Indeed.com. As the leaves change, leave the hiring to Indeed. Their all-in-one hiring platform helps you attract, interview, and hire candidates all from one place. And Indeed's interview tool lets you schedule and conduct virtual interviews right from their website. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
I always wanted to learn Spanish, but I never thought I'd have the time. Then I discovered Babbel.
Babbel's lessons are fun. They only take like 10 or 15 minutes, and in 3 weeks, presto, you're speaking another language. Like magic.
I love that Babbel's lessons aren't just robots talking. They're voiced by native speakers, so you get the pronunciation just right. And they're designed by real language teachers, so you learn how to have real-world conversations, things you'll actually use.
3 weeks. It's incredible. After 3 weeks, I'm on vacation in Paris, having a conversation in French.
There's all kinds of ways to learn. Use Babbel's podcasts or games or videos. You can even join live classes with a language teacher.
If you want to learn a language, there's no faster, easier, better way than
Babbel.
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 Babbel, évidemment.
Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's BABBEL.com. Babbel.com.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso, weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM, brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., and let's talk El Paso.
Want to save big on new blinds? Blindster.com offers custom-made blind shades and shutters shipped directly to you at prices less than big box retailers. Shop Blindster now and save 45% off any order. Just use code RADIO. Offer ends soon. Shop today. Blindster.com. This report is sponsored by Blindster.
Weather and traffic info. You need it? We have it. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed. News Radio 690 KTSM. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Welcome back to Talk El Paso, airing in this pre-recorded interview on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk, whichever is the right way for you to find us, where you can see us now, or is the best for you, best accounts for you, etc. That's the right place for you to be as we continue our mission to talk about all the things that affect us here in the borderland with live local talk radio. And of course, keep those comments going over there. Opening up those phone lines a little bit later this segment as we usually do. But in any case, joined here again in studio again for this segment by Susan Goodell, CEO of the El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank. Thank you very much for sticking around with us today.
Absolutely.
So, of course, we've been talking about the challenges that have been facing both our community as well as specific resources within it. Of course, the ones that y'all deal with, the food resources, the ability to sustain itself for those that are kind of either on the edge or in danger of falling off it, essentially. But of course, the entire situation going on with immigration, border security, what we've literally been seeing on our streets in El Paso has further complicated that. And so I wanted to directly address at least one comment that a caller of ours brought up as a sincerely held concern, and definitely one I wanted to delve into, that essentially the concern was that given the response, given what has been needing to be mounted for the hundreds to thousands daily that we've been seeing being released from federal custody into El Paso and either onto streets or into other temporary accommodations, with the goal essentially for the majority of them, to my understanding, to be moved them out of town. But that even in the midst of that response here, the concern was essentially that that is therefore taking away resources provided by the food bank and related agencies to residents of the area. What are the realities and what is going on in terms of, I mean, it's always been a balancing factor, I know, between resources coming in and what needs to be distributed. How is this situation affecting that? And if essentially, is that causing any lack of resources available to people living in the region?
So I would say that it's a balancing act. So when we consider the 154,000 individuals who are residents of the greater El Paso community, compared to the 2,000 or so migrants that are in our community on a daily basis, you can see the difference in scale. The challenge for us is really the specialized needs of the migrants. They come into our community with literally practically nothing. So they need cots, they need blankets, they need hygiene kits. Our partnerships at the national level allow us to provide those items. We're also receiving specialized ready-to-eat foods at the national level also to support these local people who don't have the resources at home because they are coming into our community and then moving on to other communities. So it is a balancing act for us. It is adding stressors to the food bank, certainly, because it does take so much manpower. We're constantly putting calls out for volunteers to come to help make the lunches, to make the breakfast, to help us with, we're even partnering with the constables, for example, who are encountering migrants on the street and providing the food and the care kits, the hygiene kits that they normally would distribute for the food bank for the homeless population. When they encounter migrants, they're also distributing them to the migrant community. So it is a stretch for us, but I would not, under any circumstances, consider it taking away from the El Paso community in need.
One of the considerations, and this is getting a little bit further beyond y'all's purview, again, you have certain charges that you have to move through given the agreements and the way the food bank is set up, particularly with federal programs. But at least some of the considerations that have been mentioned kind of alongside that sentiment I expressed earlier from one of our callers is that essentially by providing resources, there's a level of encouragement or something making it seem like, well, it'll be fine to be here. Again, the focus of pretty much all aspects of the response locally has been on keeping people moving. Essentially, that's what both the local nonprofit community and even the governmental response has been. But to a finer point, and we were talking about this during the break as well, that it's not so much a stop providing resources and therefore no one will come. I mean, if there's been difference, one of the big changes we've seen in the immigration patterns is the arrival in this area as opposed to others. That's one of the big changes happening in this current moment. But also the fact of the matter is that the way you all look at it about the resources provided here, it's not so much about making it easier, but rather basically avoiding the worst outcomes and avoiding what could happen when you have desperate people making desperate decisions.
I think that's true regardless of what population you're talking about. I've been doing this work for 20 some years, both here in El Paso and in Detroit. And I can tell you when people come to the food bank for food, when there is a general feeling that there will be enough when their turn in the line comes, people are incredibly kind and they are incredibly polite. When there is a fear that they will not be able to feed themselves and their children because there is not enough, people do desperate things. And I think that's part of human nature. I don't think it's exclusively a situation with people who are poor or migrant or fill in the blank. Humans need food to survive. And we cannot allow a situation in any circumstances where people are feeling desperate and that their food security is at risk. That is not healthy for those individuals, and it is not healthy for society to have people put in those positions.
So kind of regardless of the situation they arrive in, avoiding that is a major underlying concern throughout most of the ways you all are formulating and gathering the resources for this response, it sounds like.
It is very much the case for us. It's something that we are constantly thinking about. And it's frankly something that we've been trained in for decades as food banks, from the federal perspective of how to look at food security, whether it's, in most circumstances, it's actually talking about low-income people. But the government thinks about this from, the social safety net and a humanitarian perspective, but they also think about it from military readiness. Are the people who are joining the military physically fit? Do they have the nutritional balance to be able to serve? That was certainly problems in World War I, World War II. And so that's where many of the social safety nets that the federal government have today came from. The federal government also looks at civil society and what are the challenges, particularly with some of the national riots that have happened across the country in the 60s and so forth, and how food insecurity played into those. So absolutely, this is primarily a humanitarian concern. It is a nutritional concern, but there are much bigger concerns that are related that the federal government looks at. And we think about food and we take it for granted, but this is literally how human beings survive. Without food, you cannot thrive. You don't do well in school. You don't do well in work. You just don't do well physically, mentally, health, etc. And so the food banks across the country and the government take this issue very, very seriously.
Again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Susan Goodell, CEO of the El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank. Again, any details on them, their responses, and how you can get involved, elpasoansfightinghunger.org. That's elpasoansfightinghunger.org, or again, their phone number, 915-298-0353, 915-298-0353. So, of course, we've mentioned a few of the needs and a few of the different factors going into it here today, but I think that there's two primary things that people need to know if they want to say, okay, what can we do to address this situation, either with the kind of emergency response or the ongoing underlying need that is, again, existing in our community. These comes to mind for me two major ways. Donations are pretty much always a good thing, and there's better ways to donate, such as if you're able to donate directly your funds to the food bank. They have great efficiencies to be able to find ways to best make the bang for the buck goes so much further. I mean, the formula I'll still use is about 7 meals per dollar, even in this day and age, right?
Absolutely. And I think people should feel very comfortable donating to the food bank, in that people are welcome in our facility really all day long. We are an organization that welcomes volunteers. And if anyone is interested in knowing more, come on down, pitch in, and be part of the solution.
Absolutely. And then to that second point there about the other way they can help is, even if they don't have the resources, funds, able to donate that way, donation of time is actually incredibly critical, because, again, at previous points during the last couple of years, there has been increased staffing resources, whether it be National Guard or other programs that were put into place. Those have largely tapered off, but again, the need and the level, and I mean, it's one thing to say that giving out so many meals, but it takes people to do it. It takes, I mean, your all's warehouse down there on Plaza Circle is an extensive facility, and it takes a lot. We're not talking about a million robots doing things down there. It takes people doing it, maneuvering it, doing the very basic things that are required to then make all of this work, right?
That's exactly right. Our facility is the size of 3 football fields, and we have a staff of less than 80. So that includes the people who are running the forklifts and driving the trucks, and really every part of, a trucking, logistics, warehousing business. So we're pretty darn lean. Without the volunteers to make the food for home delivery to homebound seniors, to make the senior boxes for more mobile seniors, to provide the backbone of the operation, it's very, very difficult for us to do that job.
Absolutely here. So again, any of the details on this, Pasoansfightinghunger.org, or again, that number one more time, 915-298-0353. So again, guest right now has been Susan Goodell, CEO of the El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank. Thank you very much for taking the time to come in here to speak with us about these issues, the scope and the challenges, and some of the specific details within that of all the things going on involving y'all and for our region here today.
Always glad to be here. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you very much for speaking with us again on all of that. And at this point, we will go ahead and take that next break. And coming out of this break, we will go ahead and open up that phone line as we usually do at this point during the program. So if you want to call in, add your 2 cents, that number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Get to the phone calls, also get to the comments as well, mentioning all of that and a whole lot more, including today's news coming out of this break. So stay tuned for more Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Slow traffic starting to back up I-10 westbound at Cotton Street exit due to a vehicle blocking 2 middle lanes. Gateway Boulevard northbound after Trans Mountain, a stalled semi is blocking the 2 right lanes, stay to the left. Accident reported Rushing Drive at Trans Mountain, and road construction north and southbound on Donovan Drive between Thorn and Red has got the left lane closed. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by News Nation. Chris Cuomo is back with a new show on a new network. Cuomo premieres on News Nation Monday, October 3rd at 8/7 Central. To find News Nation on your television provider, go to newsnationnow.com/join us.
From fuel injectors to intake valves to combustion chambers and beyond, your car's emission system takes a beating. It gets choked with baked-on carbon that affects your air-to-fuel ratio, slowing you down. You gotta keep it clean to get top performance, longer vehicle life, higher gas mileage, and to pass state emissions testing. Show your car some love with CRC Guaranteed to Pass Emission System Cleaner. Yep, guaranteed to pass. Strong language for a strong product. And here's some more. Double your money back if you don't pass. You know it's gotta work. It's on the shelf at your favorite auto parts store, so grab some today. Expensive? Heck no. Hard to use? Heck no. Effective? You bet. Try it once, and you'll add it to your car a few times a year to keep things rolling just right. CRC Guaranteed to Pass Emission System Cleaner. Look for the box.
Cops across America are under fire. It's true. Our men and women in blue are quitting early in record numbers. Woke policies, loss of immunity, and defunding the police have made it a very dangerous job. Already this year, almost 200 cops have died in the line of duty. Now, Greg Kelly says enough is enough. Greg's on Newsmax all this week, exposing the real dangers to cops and to your family. He exposes Biden's policies that are putting cops in the red zone and making our cities unsafe. Tonight, watch Greg Kelly's special series, Cops Under Fire, on Newsmax at 10 p.m. Eastern. Greg asks, if the cops protect us, who protects the cops? Find out on his Newsmax special series. Find out why 40 million Americans now watch Newsmax regularly. Find out why millions are making the switch to Newsmax. Tune in tonight for Greg Kelly and Cops Under Fire on Newsmax. Make the switch. You won't look back.
Talk El Paso, bringing you the biggest stories from the borderland and beyond, 4 to 6 p.m. every weekday, brought to you in part by Sergio Lewis Body Shop. Call the pros at 915-593-0191. That's Talk El Paso, Monday through Friday at 4, right here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Do you need new blinds or shades? Blindster.com offers custom-made blinds, shades, and shutters shipped directly to you at prices less than big box retailers. Blindster blinds are easy to install and guaranteed to fit. Don't overpay for new blinds. Shop today and save big. Blindster.com.
Downtown El Paso Restaurant Week, September 23rd through 30th. DowntownElPaso.com for details and menus.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days. Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of comments coming over there, popping up some of the more relevant ones, or the ones coming in at the moment we got them anyway. We'll keep doing that, but reading more on air as we get again out of the interview. Again, thanks to our guest from this hour, Susan Goodell, CEO of the El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank. I have to say, pretty important organization for our region. So, taking those phone calls now as well. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. And some concerns that relate to these issues, RJ putting it one way, saying a depression plus housing crash plus shrinking global food supply equals a desperate, broke, homeless, and hungry population. I think that is not exactly the worst, but amongst one of the worst case scenarios I could imagine involving that, because, yeah, if we don't have more dealing with some of these things, it would be serious problem. And that's part of the reason that I greatly value that work. Never had to use it myself, knock on wood, the services of the El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank, but you never really know who might, and particularly in this day and age, what might come down to it. At least one other point that I wanted to bring up here, a comment that came in that I wanted to read, otherwise than just posting up there. Besides a couple of comments about Fluckametta saying she's making me hungry, as we were talking with our guests about the food there, and Marky Mandingo saying that getting House of Pizza tonight and a pastrami sub along with it. I had pizza joint myself earlier today, so I can understand that compunction wanting to get it. But an interesting one that came in, Eric McNabb, saying that this is important for racist Greg Abbott supporters to be aware of. El Pasoans are not being deprived of resources. Greg Abbott supporters don't care about poor or struggling American citizens anyway. And I wanted to make sure to read that one and not just pop it up without context, because I have it's an interesting perspective, let's just put it that way. And I find it in the same vein as the whole deplorables conversation, saying that, well, anyone I disagree with must obviously have something wrong with them here. And sure, I am positive that there are going to be some people that may or may not fit that. But in phrasing it in such a way as saying is therefore everyone fits this, that anyone who could possibly support this guy is obviously racist or something along those lines here, I see it across the political spectrum, maybe not in that exactly these terms, but essentially coming down to the idea that, everyone would really agree with me if it weren't for a few intervening factors or, their own inherent problems with them. And that's just not useful in a variety of ways. Besides the fact that, A, you're not actually dealing with the issues underlying there if you're really in favor of them or not. And even some further comments that came in about that. Marky Mandingo responding, saying, I kind of agree. I don't think he is racist, but dead set on getting votes by rallying up his voting base. Why aren't migrants going to Austin? Maybe because Austin doesn't know what Chile is and more such things. But seriously, when it starts getting into that level of possibility, I mean, just saying that, well, it's just because everyone against me is some ism or ist or something like that. Like, there are absolutely people out there that are like that. I'm not by any means saying that racism, sexism, bigotry, xenophobia, any of those things don't exist, but by describing just like all the major things, or trying to say that anyone could possibly support a candidate or position is like that, you're not really engaging in political discourse at that point. It's kind of just trying to make yourself feel better about, like, well, they would agree with me if it weren't for these underlying factors. And yeah, it's a bit of a problem there, I will say. But let's go back to those phone lines again. Or actually, you know what? I've talked through this break right now. So as to not shortchange anyone, let's go ahead and take that break. So if you're on the line, stay there. If you want to get on the line, that number again to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We will be back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Getting into a whole lot more, taking your comments and calls throughout the next hour of the show. So stay tuned for all that. That number one more time, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Slow traffic starting to back up I-10 westbound at Cotton Street exit due to a vehicle blocking two middle lanes. Gateway Boulevard northbound after Trans Mountain, a stalled semi is blocking the two right lanes, stay to the left. Accident reported Rushing Drive at Trans Mountain, and road construction north and southbound on Donovan Drive between Thorn and Red has got the left lane closed. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Employee onboarding?
Automated.
Customer support?
Automated.
What if you could automate all your company's routine operation tasks and do it easily? Lead management.
Automated.
With Zapier, you can. Zapier is the leader in no-code automation. Connect over 5,000 apps, automate almost any workflow, and streamline your team's performance without hiring a developer and with no coding required. That's right. Zapier's templates make it simple for you to automate anything in minutes, no matter your level of expertise. Zapier eliminates routine tasks and frees your employees to focus on the bigger picture. And with Zapier's advanced security features and annual SOC 2 audits, your data is safe and secure. See why thousands of companies, including Slack, Salesforce, and HubSpot, trust Zapier to automate their businesses. Even complex tasks?
Automated with Zapier.
Try Zapier for free today at zapier.com/radio. That's zapier.com/radio. Zapier.com/radio.
The biggest stars in all of music share the stage at our iHeartRadio Music Festival.
A stallion.
It's your girl Megan Thee Stallion.
A pit bull.
It's a 305.
A couple of combs.
Luke Combs. Sean Diddy Combs.
A couple of legends.
Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo.
The Black Keys.
Black Eyed Peas.
LL.
Cool J.
MM. Maren Morris. And MM.
Marcus Mumford.
She.
Avril Lavigne.
He.
Lionel Richie.
And them.
Sam Smith.
Policy.
Our iHeartRadio Music Festival, brought to you by Capital One.
Coming to the CW October 7th and 8th.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth. Step out of the car, please. I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Teens in foster care will love you, even if you don't know the lingo.
Dad bod, noun. The result of the occasional donut, always washed down with confidence.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council. Visit adoptuskids.org.
Traffic's bad enough without Mother Nature adding to your headache. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed with news on the hour and the hash. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Ian has become a hurricane once again as it barrels towards South Carolina. Governor Henry McMaster, however, said Ian's storm status isn't what's most important.
Doesn't make much difference whether this comes in at hurricane strength or below it storm strength, because it's going to be blowing strong winds.
Ian is now a Cat 1 hurricane and is expected to land near the city of Charleston tomorrow morning for its second U.S. landfall. The hurricane gains strength over the Atlantic. Weather warnings are in effect for Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. The governor of Florida is issuing this warning to residents: do not rush to come home. On Twitter, Governor Ron DeSantis said many areas dealt with severe flooding and damaging winds from Hurricane Ian. A utility company in Florida is working to restore the power of more than 1 million customers. Florida Power and Light CEO Eric Szilagyi says restoration is in progress. Investors are fearful of a recession as the market has a major sell-off. Stocks close lower, and some traders believe the Federal Reserve won't slow down the aggressiveness of rate hikes. Meantime, Bank of America downgraded Apple, which led today's sell-off. At the closing bell, the Dow Jones lost 558 points to 29,225. The S&P fell 78 points to 3640. The Nasdaq dropped 314 points to 10,737. Jeannie Thomas still believes the 2020 election was stolen from former President Trump. Lisa Taylor reports.
So says the chair of the House January 6th committee. The conservative activist and wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas interviewed with the panel today. Chairman Benny Thompson didn't give further details, but said he was at least glad she showed up.
The Department of Education is narrowing the qualifications for borrowers having their student debt forgiven. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. A doctor from Laguna Hills, California, has pleaded guilty to organizing a scheme to defraud Medi-Cal out of $20 million. Phil Hewlett reports.
The 69-year-old doctor pleaded guilty to 8 felonies on Wednesday. He'll have to pay $2.3 million in restitution and give up his medical license. Prosecutors say the doctor helped 2 convicted felons get expensive pharmaceuticals to sell them on the streets of Southern California. The doctor wrote prescriptions for HIV medications, antipsychotics, and opioids that the men then sold on the illicit market. He'll be sentenced next year.
The 3-day strike at SFO is over. The union, representing about 1,000 restaurant workers at San Francisco International Airport, says a tentative deal has been reached. Union reps claim a victory for their members, saying the deal gives the workers raises and free health insurance. The rank and file will vote on the agreement on October 2nd. Long Island Congressman Lee Zeldin says the New York governor's race is a lot closer than most polls are showing. Sarah Lee Kessler reports.
The latest Siena poll shows Governor Kathy Hochul leading Zeldin by 17 percentage points, but her GOP challenger says his internal polling shows him just 6 points behind, within striking distance of an upset, despite Hochul's huge war chest.
It's all good, and we're going to win this race on November 8th.
Zeldin pointing out that in 1994, pollsters had Mario Cuomo beating George Pataki. They were wrong. Hochul's not taking any chances, though. She's unleashed a barrage of negative ads featuring Zeldin's views on Trump, guns, and abortion.
A California high school has to reschedule its homecoming dance after the gymnasium was found filled with bats. Davis Senior High School was supposed to hold the dance Saturday, but the flying mammals made that proposition difficult. Animal Control says it's going to take a while to evict the new residents. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
The can't-miss music event of the year is coming to the CW.
The 2022 iHeartRadio Music Festival.
Featuring once-in-a-lifetime performances from the biggest superstars in all of music.
Ladies and gentlemen,
What's up, Vegas?
make some noise.
I don't know if y'all ready for this.
All hosted by Ryan Seacrest from T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas.
Don't miss our 2022 iHeartRadio Music Festival.
October 7th and 8th at 7 p.m. on the CW.
This report is sponsored by News Nation. Chris Cuomo is back with a new show on a new network. Cuomo premieres on News Nation Monday, October 3rd at 8/7 Central. To find News Nation on your television provider, go to newsnationnow.com/join us.
A construction site is a noisy place where things can be misinterpreted. We need to redo the drywall. It can sound a lot like,
Rewire the hall? They're firing Paul?
wait, what did I do? Or even,
Install a waterfall. Whose dumb idea was this?
Be on the same page at every stage with Autodesk, from the designers to the field crew to the owner of the finished building. Autodesk Construction Cloud gives everyone clarity. Now, how about that drywall?
So I'm a dog, and I just got adopted by this new human guy, and I'm starting to wonder how he got along without me. I mean, okay, something as simple as walking around the block. He's got this leash thing, and he puts me on one end and him on the other, and I'm just taking him around. I think he's afraid of getting lost. Without that leash and me guiding him along, I don't think he'd find his way back home. But it's kind of cute.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. A lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
That's just one adoption story that started at a shelter. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, and twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. We mentioned all of those places in order to, well, be able to tell you where you can best find us, make those comments, add in your 2 cents. We have a lot of people doing so for the show today so far. RJ, Kathy Codry, Eric McNabb, Maria Collin, Flaco Jimenez, Marky Mandingo, Stephen Christopher, EFR, I'm sure Barbara Carrasco. I'm sure I'm missing some further in there, but they do go pretty quickly these days. Dropping those likes and reacts, we appreciate. Might be the easiest way to put it, including Ion Graham, Ida Beza Gardner, Ted Kors, Eric McNabb, James Holmes, Flaco Jimenez, and who else we got? Robbie Flores, Marky Mandingo, and Monica Cervantes, if I didn't say that one already. So getting a little bit long in the list. It's hard to look at all of them, which we appreciate, frankly. So do our best to at least talk about it, including some conversation a little bit earlier about the downtown ballpark. I mean, I guess that makes a little bit of sense in coming up on this. And also Abel Rodriguez commenting earlier. Want to make a point about that, as well as many of the topics we're discussing today. Mark Mandingo saying that we do not need more hospital beds. We have many empty beds. I know I was at Providence for weeks, and when I was walking the halls, I saw many empty beds. On the part about that capacity for care thing. Some discussion back there, including Eric McNabb, unhappy with that idea, saying if the law doesn't pass, the children who died due to lack of access to health care can be pro-life and oppose the much-needed UMC bond. I'm not saying I'm opposed to having more hospital capacity in town, but the way this is being proposed and the way it is being moved forward with have a few issues I have with it beyond the basics. But trying to link it immediately with that is a little bit. I'm not quite buying your reasoning there. I guess I'll put it that way. A whole lot more comments and things going on there, so keep those going. We'll pop up what we can. And we're commenting on a related note saying that watching the response in Florida dispels the government narrative to see people of all races helping those in need. And I mean, seriously, we got our issues here that we'll keep delving into, but definitely think and keep in your thoughts and prayers those in Florida in the path of Hurricane Ian and the many issues coming along with it. And that's going to be a long recovery process. Anyway, let's go back to those phone lines. Again, that number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM, 915-544-KTSM. Got to get that 915 in there these days, even if I sometimes forget to say it. Just make sure you always put it. Otherwise, the call won't go through anymore. That's how it works. In any case, we got a lot of calls on the line here, so let's jump right in. We do have Raul on the northeast side here with us right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, so, I'll be attending the governor's debate tomorrow evening. But, why only one debate between Beto and A-Butt? I'm sure Beto would like to have more debates, but A-Butt is probably chicken. Kind of like the Republican Party, which has said its presidential candidates will not participate in presidential debates. What a bunch of cowards, It's very sad that there's 154,000 El Pasoans needing food assistance. out of a metro population of 974,000 people. That's 16% of the population. You know, I'd rather have my taxes spent on feeding El Paso's poor people than on a ballpark, an arena, trolleys. It's sad to say that endemic and systemic poverty is what we get when plutocrats and their purchased politicians run the show. Now, the U.S. poverty rate is 11.6%. That's 38 million people, lots of them little kids. So apparently Trump did not eradicate poverty in America and make America great again. And again, endemic and systemic poverty in America is what we get when plutocrats and their purchased politicians run the show. Now, I feel really bad for the Floridians who are suffering from that Hurricane Ian, and how horrible it must be to have your home flooded and destroyed. And my advice to them is to move somewhere else where this kind of thing doesn't happen repeatedly, and appreciate that this takes government and taxes to do these kinds of things. And I want to thank all the people willing to risk their lives to save these people. Too bad their lives are being put at risk because of others' bad decisions and policies. And in as much as this isn't the last time that this is going to happen, any more than illegal immigration, global pandemics, and mass shootings in America, we must do all we can to understand what causes these disasters, prepare for them, and mitigate the harmful effects of these eminent man-made problems. You know, anthropogenic global climate change and COVID are not hoaxes like Trump called them. And the global climate change deniers, the right-wing politicians owned by the energy plutocrats, and the people deceived by them also want to deny America's racist history and plutocrat sin. And some of these same Republicans are the same people who would like to see the government become a theocracy, like Christian nationals, like that right-wing Trumper Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, whose husband just filed divorce over her repeated affairs. It appears that she takes after her hero, notorious cheater and adulterer, Orange Jesus Trump. And I guess global climate change deniers and the GOP believe that all the unprecedented bad weather is just God's will. Just like the worst weather disaster in Old Testament history when their God flooded the earth, killing everyone, all the babies and puppies and kitties and dinosaurs and people who he made and went bad, or were good and just couldn't make it to the ark in time. So in the climate change deniers' delusional minds, all the death and destruction from climate catastrophes have nothing to do with man's pollution of Mother Earth's atmosphere with fossil fuels, because it's all either a hoax, a socialist witch hunt, fake news, or the devil's doing, who God gave dominion over the earth. Satan made him do it.
We're getting really far afield with some of these points here. And okay, it's been a while since I've done my Sunday school Bible class, but I don't think that's exactly how that story you're referencing unfolded there. In any case, again, the factors that I prefer looking at when it comes to this is that, yes, as the debate continues to go on about the factors of climate change, and frankly, I'm invested in seeing what that is, the more interesting public policy part of it for me still continues to be, what are we going to do about it? Because I don't find there to be much debate on the existence of it or not. I know there are some that say climate change is a hoax, but I think mostly what we're referring to there is about the man-made part of it. And again, I'm willing to encourage debate on those kind of subjects, but if we're going to say nothing is actually changing, I think you're going to find there to be more than a few things in support of that. So the question about what are we going to do about it if things are changing, and again, the evidence of change literally surrounds us here in this region of places where people used to inhabit no longer do, not even the unsettled peoples and the natives that existed here before colonization happened, but those that had settled cultures and parts of that, to say that they just up and left one day because they found a better southern facing view. Think no, that's they people don't put that much effort into building up aspects of civilization and then just give up the ghost without some damn good reason. So that exists both throughout our region and even the parts of this hemisphere. So I don't encourage the whole head in the sand, like, nah, everything will be fine. Nothing is bad. And sure, like there's whole aspects of, China and other developing countries contributing. That's the part where I'm like, okay, we can get really deep in the weeds in that kind of an argument. But the one I find the most useful, again, is what are we going to do about it? And again, I'm thinking locally, going to very much encourage, as we kind of have started to not do, which hopefully will continue, knock on wood, not building in arroyos, flood paths, etc. But I will say this for Florida, to the point you've made a couple of days now, that, why does anyone live there? I mean, having visited there, it's a very pleasant place outside of those hurricane time. So I can understand why someone might want to live there full time. I might, it's not that I'd ever invest in a timeshare given all the ads we have about why that's a bad idea, but finding some kind of temporary accommodation there, I could see myself doing it and then just kind of having built into the back of my mentality and know that it might get washed away every decade or so. So maybe not make this a permanent amount of residency there. And to the other parts of it, again, we're just getting really far afield from some of the local topics we're going on here. It's not Friday yet, so I do appreciate the point in the call for what it's worth here, but let's talk about what exactly we got going on in our area. Have a lot of questions and comments coming in on some of these points. And yeah, definitely hoping and praying for the people in Florida, and not exactly going to take any pleasure in them being proven right or wrong by their housing choices. So appreciate the point in the call for what it's worth, but we're going to let that go for today. Again, to another call on the line here. Again, that number to call is 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. We have Barbara on the west side here with us right now. Barbara, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding that gentleman that just threw the word out racist, it just amazes me how people can use words to describe others who have absolutely no idea who they are. His wife is Hispanic. She is the granddaughter of Mexican immigrants. So people need to stop just calling people names that they don't know and they don't know what they've done or who they are. And for Raul, oh my Lord, he needs to write a book or journal every night to see what the root of his vile, vicious remarks are, which I know is his freedom of speech. But when you have that much pent up hatred or loathing of people who don't agree with you, you need to seriously think about journaling at night. That might help your attitude and it might clear your mind, hopefully. But anyway, what I was calling about, I always get sidetracked, don't I? What I was calling about was an article I read in Texas Tribune, which was titled, "Migrant Encounters at the Border Are Higher Today Than Were Before Governor Abbott's Operation Lone Star Began." But they don't put the but. So if you read further on down the article, Victor Manjeras, director of the Center of Law and Human Behavior at UTEP, said that there is a sign that Operation Lone Star is intended to do. And the reason he said that is they showed the percentages of immigration into Texas, and it's at 6.9, so it didn't zero it out. Arizona is at 36.3, California at 30, and New Mexico at 47%. So he's saying, would you rather have the higher one or an indicator that it is decreasing, because it's only 6.9 in Texas. So the Operation Lone Star is having some effect in Texas. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, and this is addressing every El Pasoan and your listeners, food inflation. Our milk since Biden took office has gone up 16%. Baby food has gone up 15%, and this is from CDC. Vegetables have gone up 9%, fish 9%, and meat 7%. So El Paso, if you want this to continue and you like these prices, vote for Armin Escobar in November. And regarding inflation, when President Trump left office, it was 1.4. It is now 8.5. You know whose policies those are, and Escobar approves them. And then we talk about high price. Let me see. The thing that's most important to people right now is inflation. Abortion is second. Still, inflation leads it. Talk about fentanyl deaths. We know that over 100,000 people have died. Approximately 80,000 of them are Americans. When President Trump was in office, they seized 3,000 pounds in 2019 of fentanyl. This year, fiscal year 21, which is not yet over, they've already seized 11,000 pounds on our borders. And then our strategic petroleum reserve. It is the lowest it has been since 1984. President Trump filled it to the highest since 1977. Everything I just mentioned hits us at home every single day, whether we're driving our cars to work, going to the grocery store. And when President Trump was in office, the day he left, the gas was at $2.20. Today, it's at $3.70. These are the reasons why we need to go to the polls and vote our pocketbook and vote our sovereignty and vote our safety. Because what Biden is doing when our representative reports is not working. But look at what fentanyl has done for the cartels. In 2018, they made $500 million. This year, and it hasn't even finished, the fiscal year's not over, they've made $13 billion, El Paso. This is, if we vote the same people in office in El Paso, we're in a permanent stage of coma. We just don't care. I care, and I shouldn't speak for everybody, but anybody who can cast a ballot for Escobar with these statistics is not awake or is just dead set on being a Democrat, and they're voting for a party, not policy. So if you go vote for policies, you're going to vote for a conservative, or maybe there's a Democrat out there that is against all these statistics that I just read and wants really people to vote and make a difference. And that's what I want El Paso to do. We need to make a difference when we go vote, and take a friend or two and think about what you're voting. And number one, first, get informed. Don't go just pick a D or pick an R and not even know what their platform is. Platforms are important. It sets the stage for where we're going with this candidate and where she or he is taking us. So, you know what? Irina Jackson is a fighter. She'll fight for us. She'll fight against illegal immigration because we all want legal immigration. And I was reading an article which specifically stated that we should be voting on merit. I mean, our immigration system should be based on merit, not on just chain migration and everything that it has evolved to today. So Irene will go out there and fight for us, for our border, for our country, and for our families at the grocery store and for our families going to work. So think about who you vote for, people.
I mean, I just encourage people to even think about voting at this point in time. I know it's a little bit preaching to the choir with the audience that's probably on here, because if you're listening to this station or this kind of programming, you're probably already at least thinking about it. But the fact of the matter is that a whole lot of people aren't, as seen by our continually dismal voting rates. So that's why I think I particularly agree with the idea of take a friend or 5 or 18 with you, because the amount of people that don't even think about it. That's why I often encourage that continue the conversation, not as tell more people about the show, though I'd appreciate that as well, but as a make more people aware that they actually have power, influence, votes in this section. Two things that come to mind, and then we got to hit the break here real quick, that even just we mentioned in the announcement post, but I hadn't actually got to the figures yet, that seizures as of a little bit earlier this week, about 17, just shy of 18 pounds of cocaine worth about $200,000 seized at the Paso del Norte port of entry. More were happening in previous weeks. I think we're on close to like 400,000, if not 500,000 in just past recent days of seizures. And that's, of course, just at the ports of entry, not as what's trying to be moved without being sneaked through in the ports of entry in between them and in the border crossings. But also on that article that you mentioned from the Texas Tribune, one thing that I definitely notice, and I'm often wondering, whenever we talk about more enforcement, I know that it was brought up back when I was in college. There was a lot of a controversy going on nationally about what about, sexual assaults on campus. I mean, definitely an important issue, but sometimes the things will get a little bit skewed, get a little bit twisted in that, okay, we've set up this new reporting network for them in ways to then report it, but now the reports of the cases have gone up so much more. And some would take that as, so really these reporting methods have increased sexual assaults, when no, these were already happening. You just know about them. And that's what I find, at least a little bit, even in the data on that article, again, titled from the Texas Tribune, you're referring to there from yesterday, actually. Migrant encounters at the border are higher today than they were before Governor Greg Abbott's Operation Lone Star. I think that a little bit of that effect is going on there. There's a little bit of a, let's just say, not just straight fact reporting going on in that article. I have some issues with the way it's being written there, but even the facts within it point that 2021 February, right before they denote the actual start of the operation beginning, that encounters were, and on the Texas-EU-Mexico border, 57.9 thousand, and that it immediately jumped to 109.5 thousand. So is it saying that Operation Lone Star caused it to double in that amount? No, that they were dealing more enforcement and encountering more. So to say that, well, it didn't do anything, it's just dealing with high levels. I'm not sure exactly prevention was a part of this, so I got more than a few issues with that here, but I do appreciate the point in the call. We got to take that next break right now. Coming out of this next break, we will go ahead and get to more of the comments, more of the calls, more of everything we do at this point during the show. Again, you are tuned into Talk El Paso, airing live here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. That number to call again, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso. You're on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Gateway East at Zaragoza, an accident there involving several vehicles. Fire truck on the scene. It's blocking the right lane just after Zaragoza. Gateway Boulevard northbound after Trans Mountain, a semi is blocking the right lane. I-10 eastbound is slow between Cotton and Trowbridge. It's stop and go with 7-minute delays. And there's a crash with injuries. Donovan Drive at Thorn Avenue. Take North Mesa Street instead. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. Recycle your old technology free during Staples Free Tech Take Back. Items like old modems, mice, and mobile phones or cables, calculators, and camcorders. Staples Rewards members get $5 back in rewards. Exclusions apply. Limit 1 reward per month. Visit staples.com/recycling. Recycle at Staples.
From fuel injectors to intake valves to combustion chambers and beyond, your car's emission system takes a beating. It gets choked with baked-on carbon that affects your air-to-fuel ratio, slowing you down. You gotta keep it clean to get top performance, longer vehicle life, higher gas mileage, and to pass state emissions testing. Show your car some love with CRC Guaranteed to Pass Emission System Cleaner. Yep, guaranteed to pass. Strong language for a strong product. And here's some more. Double your money back if you don't pass. You know it's gotta work. It's on the shelf at your favorite auto parts store, so grab some today. Expensive? Heck no. Hard to use? Heck no. Effective? You bet. Try it once, and you'll add it to your car a few times a year to keep things rolling just right. CRC Guaranteed to Pass Emission System Cleaner. Look for the box.
The biggest stars in all of music share the stage at our iHeartRadio Music Festival.
A stallion.
It's your girl Megan Thee Stallion.
A pit bull.
Mr. 305.
A couple of combs.
Luke Combs. Sean Diddy Combs.
A couple of legends.
Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo.
The Black Keys.
Black Eyed Peas.
LL.
Cool J.
Maren Morris. And
Marcus Mumford.
She.
Avril Lavigne.
He.
Lionel Richie.
And them.
Sam Smith.
Halsey.
Our iHeartRadio Music Festival, brought to you by Capital One.
Coming to the CW October 7th and 8th.
Here's a message just for the attorneys out there. So you passed the bar, joined a firm, or even built your own. Now are you finding out that you're doing more administration than actual law practice? Lexicon can help. Lexicon is a legal technology provider with over a decade of experience streamlining administrative tasks like timekeeping, billing, and more, so you can focus on maximizing billable hours and increasing client satisfaction. Call 855-4-LEXICON or visit lexiconservices.com/go to learn more.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you all very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app. A lot of comments coming in over on our various social media channels, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, including Marky Mandingo, Eric McNabb, Glenn Stewart, Lily Guevara, RJ, Barbara Carrasco, Marky Mandingo, Kathy Codry, and more. into some of these things here, and you got issues with someone's reasoning here, I prefer more to, let's just say, deal with the reasoning and the thoughts behind it than just say, well, you're an awful person and therefore I disagree with you. I tend to be my personal stance on it, and the ideas about it, and including just not following on some of these quotations being made on some of the other people here. Because if anyone literally said what Eric McNabb is quoting here, yeah, we wouldn't be entertaining that comment on the show, because the idea of that very idea, no, that ain't gonna fly, hero. So trying to put that on other people. Let's see the screenshot you're talking about there. Would love to see it further. In any case, get back to those calls now. Again, the number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Ben on the east side here with us right now. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Andrew. In response to Raul, bad decisions and policies. These are just a few of the things, like giving encouragement and aid to Ukraine to fight an unwinnable war, like opening up our borders to anyone who wants to come into our country, like to quit producing fossil fuels without providing any real alternatives, like making it impossible for the free world to do the things with energy that we took for granted 2 years ago, shutting down our economy for COVID, paying people not to work. Andrew, have you ever heard of modern monetary policy?
I do believe we've discussed it a few times here. I do, if I'm thinking correctly.
Okay. Monetary resources are not unlimited. At least they really aren't, because this business about just printing up money to take care of whatever ails a society is a recipe for disaster. All these things require resources, and our resources are gone. I also have unlimited resources to give to charity. And when I give to charity, I want my limited resources to go to my fellow Americans and not to charities that give to illegals, and take limited resources away from those Americans in need because of bad decisions and policies that this Go Brandon government has perpetrated on us.
Absolutely. That is your prerogative, and I understand why you might make your own decisions. But let me just put it this way. Whenever we're talking about, again, speaking specifically of our guest from last hour, the El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank, that there are different things that they are using to pull in to deal with that particular part of the situation, not taking them away from our current ones. But I, of course, can't force you to donate to anyone. That would be no longer a donation. That would be a tax, among other things. But I will just say that I would urge you to reconsider in this case, because the amount of those residents of our region that are still very much in need that the organization goes to support here. When I do my charity, it tends to be with that organization, but that's my perspective on it. You're, of course, entitled to your own.
Yeah, well, again, one of the things she said is that, there's 156,000 people here in El Paso that are in need. But we have limited resources, and 3,000 of are illegals that are in need. And yes, that is a disproportionate amount of Americans and everything. But, there's limited resources also. So sometimes you have to choose between helping your own or helping others. It's all well and good to be charitable, but you really need to take care of your own first. And I would wish that they would, take that into consideration, because 2,000 people taking 2,000 people away from getting those resources, that means 2,000 people on the 156,000 are not going to get as much. Okay, because there is a limited amount of resources.
I'll say that there obviously is a limited amount of resources, no such thing as a free lunch and all that kind of thing. But the way they're doing it, they're pulling in specific things to deal with this. And even if you are still concerned about that, let me put it to you this way, that this crisis response that we're dealing with right now will eventually end one way or the other, but the need in our region and the need that is still going to be done by work like this, again, organizations such as the El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank or others, that's going to be needed probably long term. Maybe not at the same level it is right now, hopefully not at the same level it is right now, but that's not a kind of operation that you can spin up overnight. So even if I do maybe even have a level of concern that you have with these ways it's being operated at the moment, knowing that it's still going to be needed in the future, I'll still be making the decisions the way I am, and hope that you can find the way to make the best impact with your charitable work, as long as you promise to keep doing it in some kind of way. I would urge you to.
Andrew, do you think that this is going to end?
I think I said
we're talking about, we have borders that are open to every Tom, Dick, and Harry that comes across now, or it makes it to where these people are fleeing countries that are destitute, and a lot of the countries are having food shortages themselves, and if we open up our borders, then everybody and their mother is going to come through our border and taking away the resources for our people. And I use the analogy still, you've got a bucket of crabs. At the top of the bucket, there's going to be the elites that are going to get out, and they're going to be fine. And then there's going to be people, there are going to be crabs that are going to be climbing up that bucket, trying to get out. And the people down below them or those the crabs down below them are going to be pulling up those crabs, and everybody's getting pulled down to the bottom, and eventually you have a bunch of dead crabs.
And I get what you're saying, the crab book analogy, though I would kind of disagree with you on the idea that any get out, because they all get pulled down. But again, I do think that this will end one way or the other. That's the other critical part of the phrase. I think you're missing what I said there, because I do see this either changing because of the completely overwhelming of resources and there being less of a let's just deal with it till it's, I think that's pretty much what the local response has been predicated on, of let's just get through this, as opposed to looking at, okay, we're expecting this to be permanent. I would hope it starts getting administered a little bit differently. Or when we come to, so either that, it continuing to change, because again, the only real constant within the entire immigration and border security response has been change, has been the only constant. Don't even expect the pattern to remain the same. Now, when I say it'll end one way or the other, I don't mean necessarily tomorrow, next week, or even next month. Hopefully it won't, knock on wood, stretch on into years, but that's when we start looking at another way it could change, with there being differences. We got, of course, that midterm election, and even though, of course, 2024 on the horizon, and I have to imagine if things are still such a crisis level, that there's going to be some change made that way. So again, I'll stand by saying one way or the other. So tell you what, we got to take that next break now. Do appreciate the point and the call, but we got to get back on track here to be able to end the show. So thanks for that. If you want to get on the line again, that number to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. A man living in Las Cruces has been sentenced for sexual exploitation of children. Cheyenne Downing was sentenced today after authorities found several video files of young girls engaging in sexually explicit conduct. Officials say the discovery was made when authorities in New Mexico investigated offenders sharing child pornography. Downing was sentenced to probation for 5 to 20 years. He must register as a sex offender. Nearly 70% of Americans are looking for extra work to combat inflation, according to a new study conducted this month by Blue Crew, which is a workforce as a service platform. A big part of what makes it hard on El Paso residents to make ends meet during soaring inflation is that most aren't making a livable wage with one job, according to Bianca Cervantes, who's with Workforce Solutions Borderplex. And those who buy tickets to this year's Sun Bowl game will probably receive merchandise from last year's matchup that was scrapped between Washington State and Miami. You just have to follow a few steps on KFOXTV.com. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Slow traffic on the I-10 eastbound between Cotton and Trowbridge with 7-minute delays. It's all bumper to bumper there. Gateway Boulevard northbound after Trans Mountain. A stalled vehicle is blocking the right lane. An accident blocking the right lane. Fire truck on the scene. Multiple vehicles involved. Zaragoza northbound at the 10 Gateway. And an injury accident, Edgemere Boulevard westbound, just outside the loop. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Monsoon season officially comes to an end tomorrow, and we'll continue to see drier weather with more sunshine and seasonably warm temperatures. Your forecast for tonight keeps a few clouds overhead with temperatures cooling into the mid-50s to low 60s by early tomorrow morning. Coming up tonight, we'll talk about how long these cooler mornings will last, plus when we could see our next rain and storm chance. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Kira Miner.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Thinking about an appliance purchase or having something installed, like flooring, kitchen, or bath? You can count on Lowe's for credit options. See the store nearest you, or go to Lowes.com for details on the latest credit offers going on now.
Hello?
Mike, this is Norma Jean at Sergio Lewis Body Shop near the airport. Have you seen Sergio?
I'm expecting him in a few minutes to cut a new commercial.
I'm really worried about him, Mike. He really believes he's a poet. It's gone to his head.
There's plenty of room up there. Anyways, his poetry isn't that bad.
Will you please have him call the shop?
Sure, Norma.
That's Norma Jean, Mike. Gotta go.
Eee, she's feisty. Hey, Sergio, there you are.
Hey, Mike, I have this great new poem. Check this out, man. Sometimes even our darkest moments are enlightening. Hey, what's so funny, man?
Nothing, Sergio, really. By the way, Norma Jean called.
Really? What did she want?
Oh, she was just telling me what a big fan she is of your poetry, Sergio. Sergio Lewis Body Shop at 3800 Admiral near the airport, where it's the customer's choice, not the insurance company's, and there's a lifetime warranty on all collision repair. 593-0191.
Listen to Red Pilled America's multi-part series on Richard Nixon. It's an in-depth look into why the media in Hollywood are so obsessed with him and goes a long way in explaining what Watergate was really about. Listen to Red Pilled America on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts. That's Red Pilled America.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to comment on the show, particularly at this point during the program. Even we're getting a little bit off track with our timing here. Getting back onto it now, getting into those calls, comments, everything we do at this point during the program. So if you want to add your 2 cents, we are going to, of course, be getting back into those. But, of course, comments over on the social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, whatever works best for y'all. So let's dive just straight back into it now, best I can think of. We do have Mark over in Central on the line with us here right now. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, Andrew.
Afternoon there. What's on your mind?
I wanted to make a brief comment on our friend Raul and his incessant rambling.
Mm-hmm.
He started out on his pitch, which eventually always leads to Trump, but mean-mouthing the plutocrats and the politicians of El Paso, blaming our high poverty level on the politicians when El Paso is run 100% by Democrats. So I think his common sense and his reasoning got clouded by his hate and vitriol. So I think, Raul, you better get your facts straight if you're going to get on one of your soapboxes and ramble like a madman. But that's all I got to say.
All right. Well, thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it. All right, you have a good one there. All right, back to those phone lines here. Again, we have Andrew on the west side with us right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you. As I've said many times before, there is open invitation to the people of the world to cross our borders. At some point, we cannot sustain this, Andrew.
I mean, that's been the case here locally already. I think that the only reason that there hasn't been larger alarm bells already being rung is, well, essentially the idea of there being those things such as the reimbursements coming. So that, again, changing formula, Barbara Carrasco did ask about that a little bit earlier, right after her previous comments, asking about what is FEMA going to pay, limits on what items. So, again, there are the limits being done on the busing. They're going to be paying about 30% of it, which is that's the $10 million the city has been talking about. So that we'd be looking about maybe $3 million out of that total amount of the contracts that have now been approved. So yeah, that's, I think, probably going to be changing the local calculus to go more towards the, I would think, potentially the whole, alarm bells being rung, but not exactly going to hold my breath on that in the meantime. I mean, maybe there can be other funding son, but I'm not sure.
Hey, Andrew, but to quote our county judge, let him in. We can handle it.
Yeah, again, I had issues with that statement at the time and still kind of do, because that's a little bit of a bring it on. We can handle it. We can take all comers. Like, can we, though? Are we truly equipped to take on everyone? Because the billions of people in this country or in this world coming to this point would maybe, anyway, issues with that, absolutely.
I do have issues with that. Question. Did Comrade Raul say he was going to attend the Abbott O'Rourke debate?
Tune in, I think, was more the implication I got here. And I've been trying to figure out if we'd be able to air that on our station here. Don't have any concrete answers for you. I know we have historically in the past, but I haven't got any concrete details on that. So hopefully I'll be maybe able to announce something more during tomorrow's show.
Well, you can get it on the KXAN's
yeah, of course.
News app. You can download it and view it on that. Also, according to Market Watch, there's not going to be any audience for that debate.
Yeah, okay. I missed that detail myself here, so I guess no one will be in attendance, strictly speaking.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that because I did not hear. I wasn't sure of what I heard.
Okay.
But also, one of the other things that Raul said, about climate deniers or climate change deniers. Well, Comrade Raul, I don't say that the climate's not changing, but it cannot all be at the fault of man-made. Please remember, there's also the Malokovic Cycle. That's part of the cycle or the problem. In other words, the Earth's orbit is not a true circle around the sun. At certain times of the year or over the years, it gets closer or it gets farther from the sun. So I believe it's pronounced the Malokovic cycle.
Sounds about right here. And I mean, that's why I think that there is some reasonable debate to be had about exact causes, things. I mean, anthropogenic climate change and the idea behind that, there is a lot of evidence to support it, but there's also things including, while you're talking about there, then also things including like solar maximums and minimums. And that's why I think that there's room for discussion on it, even if, again, that's why I keep coming down on the idea of what are we actually going to do about it and what are we going to do about the things that are observable? Because if you want to just get down to brass tacks about it, climate is weather over time. And if we're noticing trends and change in it, if we're not responding to that, that's just kind of a head in the sand moment from my perspective.
Understood, yes, but all of it cannot be blamed on human beings. It's naturally occurring. That is stuff that we basically may not have any way to control.
And again, there are even some further points being made up here, even if Eric McNabb is on the comments disagreeing with us on that point. Kathy Kodry pointing out that, China and India are among the worst polluters. So, that's definitely an important point to be made as part of that here. And that's why, I mean, sure, I'm not necessarily opposed to us doing more locally to improve our environment. That is rarely something I'm opposed to, but if it's being done and therefore we all have to go outside and live in tents now, I'm going to start having that's when we start getting to the logical bounds that I'm not following it on that leap of.
Okay. Yes, I'm in agreement with you on that. Oh yes, Eric McNabb. Yes, probably another student of Comrade Raul. But anyway, that's besides the point. I turn the mic over to you.
I appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Thank you.
All right, squeeze in another call here as we can. I mean, again, your opinions may differ on this, but again, that's why I kind of focus, as we do a lot on this program, more on the policy about, okay, what are we going to do? Because honestly, there's, as much as I think that there are some very specific factors we could be looking at. I mean, I look at previous factors, specifically when we're talking about the Clean Air Act, even if there are maybe some issues with exactly how it was implemented. I mean, it's before my time, but people have told me about the way, certain local areas were getting to be unbreathable before the 70s and things like that changed. There obviously are things that we can do and should probably be looking at in our local area. And a lot more commentary on that. Anyway, we do have Frankie and Missy on the line with us here right now. Frankie, thanks for joining us.
All right, thank you. I want to say something.
Mm-hmm.
I am so ticked, more than ticked.
Mm-hmm.
I can hardly hear you because of static. Now, where I'm at, my nearest neighbor is 200 meters from me. I got other neighbors at 500, and I'm looking all over the place, and nobody's running any kind of machinery. It's on your end. Some nut job is interfering with your signal, but I can barely hear you on the radio I'm talking about. Anyway, by the way, and also, you say you go all the way to Albuquerque. Is there anybody else calling you that they can't get the signal? That's what I want to know also. Is anybody, your Radium Springs, Truth or Consequences, anybody calling you?
Not as so far as much here. And again, to clarify what I say there, it's on a good night because of the way atmospherics works. If anyone wants to truly look up how radio communications work, the say the local ham radio club would be happy to give you a crash course and get you signed up with them. They've talked with me about that, and I probably will do that before too long. But it's tricks of physics and atmospheric conditions can cause it to not fully work in all places. So I will say no one else has called us to say yet where's the signal gone, but that's also one of the reasons I suggest that you get the iHeartRadio app on your smart device, if at all possible, because then as long as you got internet, you can still get us.
Yeah, well, I hear you on that. But, I'm in my garage with my whiskey and my beer and my cat. And it's hard for me to bring my computer stuff for your app stuff. So I just turn the radio on because it's more convenient. Nevertheless, I want to know what the heck is going on with this judge out there in Florida, which seems to be definitely in the tank for the Donnie Dotar doofus. Everything she does is all for the Donnie Dotar doofus. She's been shut down so many times, I can't remember how many. And then the 11th Appeals Court has also embarrassed her for her judicial stupidity. So what is the matter with this girl? That's what I want to know. What's your thought process?
I've seen some of the things we got going on, including, of course, like the special master proceedings, even though we're getting a little bit far afield from local. But let me just say this. I know oftentimes it can be tempting to say, well, all the decisions are going in the way of one person, but ultimately, when you're looking at judicial proceedings like that, like, sure, I mean, this can lead to, accusations of bias or not full consideration of the factors. Having never fully been involved in the legal profession, didn't go to law school, nothing like that. I'm not trying to pretend I am, but did a lot of preparation. I thought I was going to do that for a good chunk of my young adult life, including mock trial and things like that, yeah, there can be unfair judges out there, but to expect that it has to be like a coin flip, like it'll go my way sometimes and the other person's way the other time, that is kind of missing the underlying point of a lot of legal preparation, is that what does the law actually support here? So it doesn't matter if someone is, what should matter and does matter most is if someone is right and correct with the law versus, well, you've been going their way a bunch of times, you need to go our way now. It's not really how it works. So not being developed or delving into the details of those cases as much. I've seen many of the same headlines you have, but it's not really totally germane to a lot of stuff we talk about here. That's at least, I would rather it be firm and fair in the law than we'll go your way sometimes. Got to play the calls, do the calls fairly to both sides here. Yeah, not really the way I'm concerned about legal cases going, I guess, and overall, not speaking necessarily specifically about that one.
Well, I want to tell you something. I love your commentary, Andrew. You're the greatest. You got the greatest local talk show ever. I've said this before, and I'm not just saying this just off the top of my head, just to be condescending. You really do have a super duper the way you do with your program. And hey, to you, Buttle Fenn, let's go, Amber Parker. That's all I want to say.
All right. Well, thanks for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
All right.
All right, we got to take that next break now. Coming out of this break, squeezing what we can, close out the show until we got coming up for you. So, whole lot more times and discussions we'll have, but sending a case, stay tuned for more Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Traffic's flowing a little bit better after that crash is cleared. Zaragoza northbound at the 10 Gateway. I-10 eastbound at Sunland Park. A stalled truck is blocking the right shoulder. A stalled vehicle blocking the right lane on Gateway North after Trans Mountain. And you've still got stop-and-go traffic on the 10 eastbound, Cotton to Trowbridge. 8-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Thinking about an appliance purchase or having something installed, like flooring, kitchen, or bath? You can count on Lowe's for credit options. See the store nearest you, or go to Lowe's.com for details on the latest credit offers going on now.
From fuel injectors to intake valves to combustion chambers and beyond, your car's emission system takes a beating. It gets choked with baked-on carbon that affects your air-to-fuel ratio, slowing you down. You gotta keep it clean to get top performance, longer vehicle life, higher gas mileage, and to pass state emissions testing. Show your car some love with CRC Guaranteed to Pass Emission System Cleaner. Yep, guaranteed to pass. Strong language for a strong product. And here's some more. Double your money back if you don't pass. You know it's gotta work. It's on the shelf at your favorite auto parts store, so grab some today. Expensive? Heck no. Hard to use? Heck no. Effective? You bet. Try it once, and you'll add it to your car a few times a year to keep things rolling just right. CRC Guaranteed to Pass Emission System Cleaner. Look for the box.
Here's a message just for the attorneys out there. So you passed the bar, joined a firm, or even built your own. Now are you finding out that you're doing more administration than actual law practice? Lexicon can help. Lexicon is a legal technology provider with over a decade of experience streamlining administrative tasks like timekeeping, billing, and more, so you can focus on maximizing billable hours and increasing client satisfaction. Call 855-4-LEXICON or visit lexiconservices.com/go to learn more.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Heads up, Texas.
So you don't rear end me when I'm at a stoplight.
So I can ride my bike safely.
So I don't have to write you a ticket. Heads up, Texas, because driving and using your phone is a bad combination. Talk, text, crash. Brought to you by TxDOT.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. We are super out of time here for this show. So the good news is we're, of course, on the cusp of Friday, and Friday means we are going to be doing comments, calls, everything throughout both hours of the show. Our press relief out for the weekend. Oh, boy, has been one that we're going to need the press relief from, really, when it comes down to it. So we'll, of course, be doing that throughout the show tomorrow and a whole lot more, getting ready to launch into our election coverage. So if anyone wants to be a part of that, drop me a line. Hey, candidates, let me know. Andrew Polk, at iHeartMedia.com. Anyone wanting to be a part of our advertising partners on that, same thing. So in any case, that'll do it for us today. Stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on your road. And, of course, have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Biggest slowdown right now is on the I-10 eastbound from Cotton through the Spaghetti Bowl to Trowbridge with 8-minute delays. Eastbound on the Liberty Expressway, you've got less than 5-minute delays from the 54 Gateway to the Loop. All lanes are back open on the Gateway North after Trans Mountain as there's a couple of vehicles moved off to the right. And an injury accident in Oregon north of Schuster at Hague Road. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
January 6, 2021. President Trump addresses his supporters.
We will never give up.
Chaos breaks out. The United States Capitol is breached.
We need more munitions.
Democrats hold hearings. A nation is divided. Facts distorted by political spin.
At least one person over here is being...
What really happened? The Epoch Times pulls back the curtain to uncover the real story of January 6. This acclaimed documentary analyzes the police response, the killing of Ashley Babbitt, and facts obscured by the legacy media. See it now on EpochTV.com and share with as many friends as possible. The real story of January 6th is free online through September at EpochTV.com. That's EpochTV.com.